This episode of Designing Minds visits the prestigious Art Center of Pasadena, California. In part 2 of this 4-part series, students Enrique Barrios and Owen Freeman discuss their powerful spread on the dichotomies of war and the ability for seeds of hope to grow in even the most desperate places.
Initially, off the bat, we all considered serious play in the context of kids and the context of the natural first instinct, which is what affects children, because there's such a personification of play. And I think that we saw that as like a first draft of an idea. I had heard something on NPR about people living in Baghdad and sort of the daily lives, and it piqued my curiosity as to, what happens, beyond the 30-second spot. What are people's day in, day out kind of lives? And sort of looking at the uncertainty of that and thinking about play in a broader sense.
I was kind of scared when Owen started saying, let's do something that's oriented towards, war, because it's a really touchy subject. But we also taken this when we first approached the project and we said, hey, listen, let's just go for this, let's tackle it. It's going to be one of the few serious ones that, focus a little bit more on the seriousness. And we have to now kind of find a way to translate the playfulness of it. In the initial process, me being a graphic designer, I started throwing these textures and all this stuff, Going into class, everybody was saying, well, it's not really about that. You don't want to just throw textures to make it look a certain way. And his illustrations were just so strong in the first place that I didn't feel like we needed any of that.
A little bit trite.
And it seemed a little hard to kind of read it. So the process was just exchanging files to each other. I think I was working in InDesign, and you were all Photoshop based and also hand.
Yeah, basically the process, try and just do pencil thumbnails quickly, and then usually I'd scan the pencil sketches into Photoshop or paint directly in Photoshop, and then send JPEGs to Enrique, and then we would kind of back and forth.
War is part of our story that we're telling these 3 spreads, but I think primarily it's like we're not pro-war or against war. We were focusing more on the humanistic quality. The initial process, I wanted to use all these ornaments, and like Arabic typography, which is beautiful, but it doesn't have any context or anything that related to what we're talking about. It's pointless, it's just decorative.
One of the main challenge, as you had mentioned earlier, was simply how do we handle a subject in the way that it deserves to be handled.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest and the most constant challenge.
Having to question yourself over and over again.
Right.
It's like, are we articulating this the right way? Are people going to understand it? And what could I do visually to try to translate that message? It's kind of tough.
First spread is some boys that are playing soccer, which is one of the major theme in a lot of the research was finding out it's a really good bonding community activity that kids are very into. And putting that against the backdrop of just a completely gutted, blown out building. The parallels of these kids are doing something that we can relate to, and it's very hopeful and happy, and then their scenery is the opposite. Second spread is 2 men in a cafe in the foreground, and they're kind of looking back at the camera. These were based on a series of different photos that we'd found in various photojournalism pieces. They're playing backgammon, and then in the background there's an explosion and there's glass breaking. The thinking behind it, which was, you have life and then you have insanity, and what do they look like right up against each other? Enrique did a really nice sketch, which I think pulled the last one together visually, which was a woman in a burqa holding a mortar shell that has some flowers growing out of it. The flowers are blowing in the wind a little bit. And I think that was kind of the note we wanted to end on.
That's a good summary of basically what you want to say in 3 spreads. This woman holding flowers using stuff that's laying around from war and making something else out of it, something positive. It's like total contradicting. Basically, that's serious play. And all across the spread, too, we didn't mention, it's the Declaration of Human Rights. That's the only Arabic typography that we wanted to incorporate. To get the chance as students to work in collaboration with somebody from a different industry is awesome. We think so differently, but we really don't. You know, we're all reaching the same goal as illustrators and graphic designers. And I think every group in the class, nobody complained about their partner. It just, you know, the flow was just perfect. Be talking about the process and the ideas and everything. We just couldn't stop.
Wow.
You know, we fell in love with the project and we fell in love with each other, didn't we?
On that note.